Thank you, Josh. There are a couple of reports that I want to bring up that came across the CTI desk here at DeepSeas. The first one being the supply chain compromise of 3CX, which is a VoIP and IPBX software provider that was the subject of a supply chain attack where suspected North Korean actors were able to take two malicious DL files that contained digital signatures that were still recognized as safe by Windows by actually exploiting a 10-year-old vulnerability. That vulnerability, which is tracked as 2013-39, was actually an opt-in vulnerability where Windows would not inform customer whether or not the digital signature fit every line of code that existed within the program if it had been edited. But if users did opt in, they would receive a warning that the object didn't match the digital signature. Unfortunately, it would appear that anyone who upgraded to Windows 11, even if they had opted in on that warning, would not receive it any longer. It would go back to default on Windows 11. So there's a lot of risk surface here to the vulnerability that was used. Back to how the 3CX attack actually worked. This is where users would download 3CX application, the desktop application for Windows, and then there would be DLL sideloading of two malicious DLLs that contained some code that would then inject info stealers that were likely leading back to North Korean actors to try to collect as much information as possible. And this went on for several months without any discovery until several different customers had been compromised, and then we saw a lot of security companies come out and release some of the indicators of compromise that were involved with that, as well as YAR rules and some other detection signatures involved. This isn't surprising given the way that we've seen North Korea operate in the past. We have seen them increasing tensions with missile strikes and becoming a little bit more prevalent on the world stage since the COVID-19 pandemic seemed to have softened down a lot of North Korean activity. But with a lot of the increase in hostilities and a lot of diplomatic pressure going on, there are a lot of countries in different regions, both Asia as well as what we're seeing coming out of Russia. We anticipate to see a lot more cyber activity from these threat actors coming out. Speaking of an increase of cyber activity, NCC Group released a report earlier this week that highlighted an increase in ransomware activity, specifically an increase of 45% between January and February of this year, with ransomware activity primarily being led by Lockbit 3.0. This goes along with reporting that we saw late in the year and early in 2023, suggesting that ransomware operations had decreased by 23% or more, according to some security researchers. Here at DeepSeas, our assessment of that kind of information was taken that a lot of these ransomware operators had not actually decreased their activity, but adjusted their activity to support Russia in Ukraine by targeting Ukrainian organizations as well as NATO, and that there wasn't actually a decrease necessarily in the activity, just in the targeting itself. And perhaps the activity decreased by number, but there was nothing that we saw that would have predicated the idea that ransomware operations were going to be on any sort of downtrend heading into 2023. And we advised all of our clients not to assume that ransomware was going to become less of a threat. The increase that is seen was the highest that NCC has ever recorded, a 45% increase. But this does look a lot like a return to normal and the generalized increasing that we see in ransomware activity. Obviously, with Q1 numbers coming out, we may be able to analyze that a little bit deeper and say whether or not there's a qualitative increase in ransomware activity. But I will say that the likelihood of ransomware going anywhere in the near future is not, it's just not something that we anticipate ever. And everyone should still be cautious of cyber criminality and ransomware activity. Just because there was a decrease last year, we do assess that was related to support heading towards Russia and more targeting going on towards Ukraine rather than commercials that we see. But we do anticipate a return to normal and normal increases right now of ransomware activity. But those numbers might be skewed a little bit because of how little we did see in 2020. 2022 during Russia's initial invasion into Ukraine. But we'll continue to monitor the threat landscape here at DeepSeas CTI, and we'll pass it back over to you, Josh. Thank you.